My presentation will be on deafness. The IDEA definition of deafness is as follows. Deafness means a hearing impairment that is so severe that the child is impaired in processing linguistic information through hearing, with or without amplification, that adversely affects a child's educational performance. Characteristics of deafness. The first characteristic of deafness is a difficulty with following verbal instructions. The second is difficulty with emotional, social, or interpersonal skills. The third is a language delay. The fourth is an articulation delay. The fifth is that someone who is deaf often follows the crowd and doesn't tend to lead a group of people. And the sixth is they get easily frustrated when needs aren't met. The seventh is the child may have a hard time expressing their feelings aloud, and they may resort to other ways, such as throwing things or even writing it down or pointing. The eighth is muffling speech, and the ninth is the child may need to turn up the volume when watching TV or asking people to repeat themselves often. Evidence-based practices for teachers. The first is visual attention. The use of smartboards or physical objects is pertinent to deaf student success. Since they can't hear what the teacher is saying, it's very important for them to write things down, use a smartboard, use their hands and physical objects to get the student to really grasp the concept and understand what they're trying to teach them. Memory. Students who are deaf often are more likely to have issues with memory. Teachers must recall periods of information over a short period of time to ensure that students fully grasp the lesson. Often, teachers will use numbers or lists to recall the student's memory because, especially with lists, it's condensed information about a large topic, most likely, and so it's easier for them to memorize the small bullet points rather than a paragraph on paragraph on paragraph. Constant conversation. Many general education teachers tend to have less conversation with students that are deaf, when in reality they need the same amount of conversation as non-deaf students. Now, this might not be verbal conversation, it may be partially verbal conversation, but they still need to have conversation to be able to advance and to be able to have the same education as their peers. They may use the visual attention such as smartboards or physical objects to get this point across and to have conversations with their students. Direct eye contact. This allows for the student to know specifically who the information is being taught to and keep them engaged in the lesson. So students who are deaf often, because they can't hear what the teacher is saying, they zone out and they don't know when the teacher is talking to them specifically. So if they don't know if the teacher's talking to them, then they might be talking to them and they have no idea. So that's why direct eye contact is really important, so that the student knows whether the lesson is being taught directly to them, or if it's a whole class lesson, or if it's to another specific student when they're doing group work or something like that. Helpful resources. The first helpful resource is the Council Education of the Deaf. There are 5 major organizations that sponsor this, and it promotes standards for teachers of children who are deaf. And it is a program specifically for teachers of children who are deaf. This just provides resources for the teachers that are going to teach students that are deaf. The next is the Alexander Graham Bell Association. This is advocacy, education, financial aid for healthcare providers, educators, and families, and there's a major importance on an early diagnosis. The earlier your child is able to get diagnosed, the earlier that they can start having an IEP, the earlier they can have an IFSP, the earlier they really get the education and the needs that they need. The third is PEPNET 2. So PEPNET 2 sets students who are deaf up for a future career post-secondary education and post-secondary opportunities. So this is really centered around what the parents can do, what the students can do to set them up for a successful future, whether that's a job or just other things that they could do around the community to keep them integrated with society and with the people around them. Helpful resources continued. The fourth is deaf education. This provides news, information, job opportunities, collaborative opportunities, and it's specifically for educators as well. So educators are able to keep updated on what's currently going on and the opportunities that their students will have in the future, which they can in turn talk to the parents about. Hands and Voices. Hands and Voices is a nonprofit, parent-driven organization. It's parent mentoring, educational advocacy on biased information, and it's very much focused on the families. It's focused on the families with students that are deaf and what they can do to advocate for their children, and really set their children up for success in the future and just in schooling as well. And then this is my works cited.